Hey there, and welcome back to an episode of the B2B Marketing Asia podcast. I'm your host, Joe Escobedo. And with me today is a friend, collaborator. She is Field Marketing Asia at Adobe. Today, we'll be talking about a series that we collaborated on called Adobe Chat's B2B Marketing Demystified Asia Edition.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear, how did you come up with the idea?
So actually, some of the idea came from you. Usually, when I think of campaign idea, I go to three different sources. Firstly, we have to always create campaigns that are relevant to our target audience. So, who better to go to than salespeople? So, I got some insights from our sales team on what our prospect asking about when they, come to us for a solution. And I gathered some insights there. Some of them you see here, rethinking third party cookie. It's one of the topics that's been asked about, especially for B2B marketers, which are our target audience. So naturally, I included some of that. And the other source that I go to when it comes to ideas for campaign is what is the market talking about? What are people talking about in the media, in news sites out there? And again, some of these topics, ABM, marketing attribution, third party cookie, constant topics that are in the media. And therefore, that gave me the idea of having to create content that will address some of those concerns. And the last one that I go to is really the vendor, like you and a lot of the event vendors that I work with. I go to you guys and ask, what are your base concern about? One important avenue that gave me this idea for this campaign is actually going through someone's B2B event agenda. I just went through their agenda and I was like, oh, those are good topics. Oh, I know who can speak to that. So all of these three different sources gave me the idea for this campaign. And why video? For those that are listening, oh, you watch video, I watch video. Joe, I'm sure you watch videos. A lot of the audience across Southeast Asia turn to video as their source of go-to medium. It's just easy to digest. It's effortless and it's fun. So therefore, that's how really this campaign came about. Video audience telling us these are the topics they want to talk about. Sales team telling me these are the topics our prospects are talking about. And voila, that's how we came up to this point.
Thanks so much, family. I love the fact that you team up with sales because I think a lot of people, when they're just starting out, they struggle to come up with ideas. But going back to your point, the fact that you teamed up with sales to figure out, okay, what kind of accounts are you going after? What insights do you provide with me? And then looking at different media you talked about, and then at different events. I think it's a great way to combine different sources together to come up with the idea. So I think this is great advice for anyone creating B2B content. Another thing I'd love to get your thoughts on is this was a series. Take us through the process behind it. You talked about, obviously, the first step was speaking with the sales team, doing the research in terms of identifying the topics. Then what came next?
So one of the first thing as a B2B marketer working for a MNC company is that the reality is the campaign has got to generate results that matters to the business. So one of the first thing in my process is to go back to my annual yearly marketing plan and look at the numbers. Hey, how does this campaign tie back up to what I have told the business I'm going to deliver? And some of the key metrics when it comes to, so it's going to be a bit about marketing attribution, right? We got to talk about how many marketing qualified leads do I expect from this campaign? How many of them do I expect sales to qualify? And ultimately, how much pipe do I expect to generate from this campaign? So that's my first starting point because I need that in order to get stakeholders approval, which is the next step to talk to, my manager, the greater regional marketing team, aligning with them. Hey, this is the campaign that I'm launching. How does it sound to you? What are some of the things that you're doing to make sure that there is internal alignment? Because the last thing you want is to launch a silo marketing campaign and somebody else somewhere global or regional is launching the same thing around the same time. Then obviously it's a waste of dollars, right? Um, and so aligning with the stakeholder, making sure they understand the plan, aligning on timing, results, budget, all that good stuff. And then finally, working with a vendor, finding a trustworthy, dependable vendor. In my case, that would be you, Joe. But finding a vendor who knows how to bring your idea to life. There is a two-way street to this, as in you gotta be able to brief vendors properly. And I've seen some interesting brief out there. And what, as marketers, brief is not fun. It's not the best part of my day, but it is so important to get the brief right, to put in the right detail, to be clear about what you want in order for a vendor to do their magic. So again, briefing the right vendor, making sure the vendor understands your idea and is not just eager to deliver, because that's not the point either. You want to deliver value add. Um, and then I guess the last point is to making sure the rails, I call them rails, but essentially their channels are set up to support your marketing campaign, making sure the different, if they're owned by different teams, that they understand what your requirements are and they can actually deliver. And yeah, I would say that those are the process I went through.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the kind words. I think, like I said, the bulk of the heavy lifting was from you and really getting a very good brief because I think that's something that on the other side, you get a lot of poor briefs. And I think you were very structured in the way you did yours. And I think one thing that worked out very well is the iterations. So once you had a rough structure, I would take a look at it. We provide some feedback,
Exactly.
and then we were constantly refining it to a point where we had a very clear plan of attack in terms of how we wanted to go about this project. So I think kudos to you because that was very helpful in structuring the entire thing from the topics, the speakers to the format. Everything was lined up from the get go. So you knew exactly what we were getting ourselves into. Now, I know that like a series is great, but I think most people really struggle with launching it because once again, you have this great content. What do you do with it? So maybe you can share a little bit more about your launch plan and how that worked out. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. So this is a demand generation program that is targeted to do two things, right? Build engagement with our existing prospects to drive them to become marketing qualified leads. And another important aspect of this campaign is to generate net new names. So we want new prospect that fits our target profile. So with those two target in mind, what I did was obviously we needed to reach out to our existing prospect in our database. So we did campaign, we did paid media campaign to go out to them. And then the next step is to generate net new name. Actually, they go concurrently, but basically the to generate net new name, we went to external parties like email sponsors who can help us reach the right audience with our campaign messaging. We, of course, paid media, paid search also help drive net new name. Yeah, those are the channels that we have in place so far. And one of the things that I would say is don't forget about your own stakeholders, your team themselves to be advocates for your campaign. So the sales team, the CSMs, the regional teams, they all help me promote this campaign through social means like mainly LinkedIn to generate a talk and generate attention for this campaign.
Absolutely. No, it's a very good point. There's usual channels like social newsletters, but the fact that you went back, going back to your point about internal alignment, and then you shared that message with the team, letting them know what it was about, where they can access the links. I think it's a great way, like you said, to amplify things, not only in the public, but also privately. So for example, for this CSM heads, if they're working directly with clients that we featured, obviously they get to know a personalized message saying, hey, thank you so much. Here's the video. Hope you enjoy it. We really appreciate you taking the time to do it. And also from the sales side, because we had a little bit of an industry focus to it, it's easy for the sales guys to go back and say, okay, we're focusing on financial services, for example. We can take this piece of content and share it with our prospects, either before the meeting to let them know, hey, here's the stuff we're working on, or even as a follow up and say, hey, I know we had a great meeting, but I just wanted to share one example of someone in the space who's doing it just a FYI. So I think to your point, getting the internal team members involved can be an excellent way to amplify the great initiative that you've already done. Last question I'd love to find out is key learnings. What are some of the key learnings that you realized during the process?
Yeah. So far, we've gained quite a good traction with industry level prospects. One thing that I struggle with is scaling the content in a way that makes sense from a resourcing standpoint. And one of the learning is that, hey, scaling it by looking at verticals is actually quite effective because each vertical, depending on what industry you are, for us, the verticals have their unique needs. I find that industry for me is the common element that I can use to scale the content that I have built by focusing on the unique needs of industry. And each these industry have commonalities across countries. So I don't need to create a technology services Thailand, technology services Indonesia campaign because much of the challenges, if you dig deeper, may be the same. For me, it is the same. And therefore, what I did was I was able to scale this across the entire Southeast Asian market and still gain traction. So that was one learning. The other learning is that, you know what, there are so many good speaker and talented leaders in my ecosystem, but finding people who are passionate, who want to talk about the topics that matter to your prospect, there's actually a lot of them out there if you really reach out and have a chat with them. Um, and for us, that's what gave this campaign success, to be able to find those speakers who not only are experts in their field, know what they're talking about, they're passionate. They want to talk about it. And we're very fortunate to have them in our campaign. And they are one of the reasons why this campaign was successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a key point that people forget about is you have the topics that really resonate, having the right speakers, because you can definitely have this recipe where you have the great topics, the great format, but then the speakers don't really match up to that. So I think everyone that we had was, like you said, very knowledgeable in their field, very passionate about, and they were articulated enough. It's very difficult, I think, to find all three, but I think we're fortunate to tick all those boxes. And I like the fact that you talked about how do you scale this up. So there's a couple different ways in which you could slice and dice this. You can do it by market, by persona, by industry. So you found that the industry way of slicing it up was the best way to scale it up, particularly in Southeast.
Yes, definitely. You can dig deep, but the reality is for teams that are lean, I am a one man, one woman team. And therefore, finding the way to scale effectively is one of the things that I keep trying to, optimize in all my demand gen campaigns.
Absolutely. Emily, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I had an absolute pleasure teaming up with you on this one. Hopefully, we'll have to do more down the road, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all your insights and all your experience here with us today.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Absolutely. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening to today's episode. A lot of good tips in here. So please feel free to share it with all your colleagues, your bosses. I'm sure they will love it. And thank you guys so much. And we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.